I'm 55. I've done a good job of saving and I want to retire at 62. Can I do this? This is the question we get all the time, and we're going to show you exactly how we answer it today. Listen all the way through. We hope you've been enjoying all the episodes from Secure Your Retirement. If you'd like to keep learning and receiving these episodes, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you receive alerts when they come out. We've helped thousands of listeners get on the path to securing their retirement. Now it's your turn. Let's dive in. Welcome back to your favorite podcast, Secure Your Retirement. We have a special guest today on with us, Nick Hymanson. He's a certified financial planner in our office and works as a wealth advisor for a lot of our clients, helping them understand their financial plan as well as their tax strategy. So first and foremost, Nick, thanks for hopping on with me today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, so let's dive in. The topic of today, and we get this question all the time. It comes in various forms of questions, but they all end up being the same at the end of the day, which is, hey, I'm of age X. I feel like I've done a good job. I want to retire at a certain date, and how is this all going to work out for me? And so, over the years in this podcast, Raiden and I have always been talking about different types of strategies, different things, but it all really comes back to this concept of a retirement focused financial plan and putting it all together in a really well thought out manner. So today we thought it would be fun to give you some visuals and kind of walk through a scenario of a fake person we created, but it's a very common scenario that we see in our practice. And I'll tell you this, it doesn't matter how much money you have, the concern is always going to be there around retirement, what that looks like for me, how do I make all the right decisions? We have clients with ranging net worths, and this transition from working, earning, and saving and planning for retirement, but actually making that transition into retirement and now withdrawing that money and having to make decisions around Social Security and Medicare and long-term care planning, not to mention a good withdrawal strategy, tax strategy, and investment strategy, that can be overwhelming, even if you feel like you've done a really good job planning for it. So today we wanted to take you through our one of our financial planning tools, which is called Right Capital. Nick's going to share his screen here, but we're going to walk through a scenario of John and Jane, clearly a made up name. And John and Jane, they are 55 in this scenario, and they have a goal of retiring at 62. And they came to us and said, hey, we've done a pretty good job, we think. We've saved well. We're still working and we're still saving, but we would really like to see if we can retire at 62. But we don't want to retire at 62 and just get by. We want to enjoy life. We want to kind of maintain the standard of living that we have today. And so the big question today is, hey, is that possible? And what are the things that we need to be thinking about? So what Nick's going to do, and if you're listening on Apple Podcast, you're listening for audio. So Nick's going to try to do his best job of talking out the numbers very well. But if you're on Spotify or YouTube, there is video there, and Nick is sharing his screen, so you can kind of follow along with us. But let's do this, Nick. Go ahead and take it away. Let's set up the conversation, and let's walk through the numbers for John and Jane.
Okay, so like Murph said, John and Jane, they're both 55 years old. I'm going to move over to the income tab here. So what we have in place for them and to set up this scenario is John and Jane are both working. They're both making $125,000. So together, that's a total income of $250,000 that they are receiving and going to be receiving up until retirement. The projected retirement here is 62 years old. So that's what the goal is. And so we're going to get into how that looks and what the numbers come out to be here in a little bit. Another income component to this is down the road for John and Jane, they are going to be receiving Social Security. So we have that in here as basically something to take into account. And what we have for both of these scenarios are taking Social Security at age 67. That's their full retirement age benefit. Now, whether it comes to taking Social Security earlier or later than 67, that's something that we would talk through and we can kind of strategize using this software. But for the purpose of today, we're going to say Social Security turns on for them at age 67. So from there, I'm going to go into what they have saved so far. So again, they're 55. They've both been working, and cash in the bank right now is about $20,000. So just cash savings, you can call it an emergency fund, but that's fully liquid there for them. Investment wise, we're saying they have $2 million saved in a various amount of accounts. For this example, John has $500,000 saved in his 401k, all pre-tax. And then same for Jill or Jane. I'm sorry. Jane has 401k money pre-tax, $500,000 as well. And they have a joint brokerage of $1 million. Joint brokerage can be anything from highly appreciated stock that's in there or different funds that they're holding. The main point of that account is that it is taxable. So that's not a retirement account. That's extra money that they've saved or that they have just in a taxable account, liquid there for them. So $2 million total in investments. And then they have their house as well. The value here is 750,000. And so total net worth, they don't have a mortgage on the property, so we don't have to include that. So total net worth, 2.7, almost 2.8 million. So from here, I'm going to go over where do they or what do they want to spend in retirement. Um, and I skipped this part. Let's say they are spending $10,000 right now. That's all in expenses. So between now and retirement, let's say $10,000. In retirement, we're going to go with that same $10,000 number. In the projection, however, there is inflation on that number. So while the $10,000 is encompassing all of their expenses, related to housing, general expenses, healthcare, everything, that $10,000 number keeps inflating every single year through the projection. So you'll see that here in the next screen, and I'll go over that as well. There's some healthcare costs projected in here. Their retirement age, like we talked about, is 62 for both of them. And for now, for this purpose, we're going to keep all of the goals in retirement pretty basic, just for the purpose of this conversation.
Yeah. So for the purpose of this conversation, we've kept it super simple. I want to remind people of that. But all these tiles, that if you're watching, we've got a bunch of tools here where we could add in, more complex type of budgeting or spending. We could add in a mortgage if we were still owing a mortgage. We could add in a vacation budget, which is actually a very common thing that we do. Most people, when they retire, they want to have fun and they want to do it in the first 10 years of retirement. And so we can add that in. So the planning ability that we have is very large when it comes to all of this. We've done relocations when it comes to housing. We've done relocations when it comes to trying to move into a CCRC, a continuous care retirement community, or gifting strategies. All these different things we can simulate, but for the purpose of today, we wanted to keep it very simple, just to give you an idea of what this really looks like. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so those are all of the inputs when it comes to creating a projection for what retirement looks like. Now I'm going to go into what we call the retirement tab here if you're following along on video. And this is essentially, we call it and describe it as a big spreadsheet. The spreadsheet's going to explain cash flow, how it goes along each year as this couple gets closer to retirement and then lives throughout retirement. And I'm going to start here in 2025. So like we talked about, the income inflow that they are currently receiving is their combined salary, $250,000. We're not including any raises on that. We just say from now until they retire at age 62, they're going to continue receiving $250,000. Very simple, very baseline, but that's the total inflows until they retire. Expenses are also included on here. That is the $10,000 per month. That is inflated 3% or about 3% every single year. So that expense number goes up, and we want to make sure that we project that it continues to go up, so that $10,000 is still taken into account. as the years go on here. Tax payments are also included and projected on here. So, of course, when there's income, typically there's tax payments. So, that's also on here. And then planned savings. What we do have for John and Jane are them maxing out their 401ks with a 3% employer match. So, from now until they retire, there's a max out of their 401ks that is included on here as well. Um, and so you can see that on the screen if you're following along. As I go down the years here, some important things that we like to point out. When retirement happens, obviously there's no more salary, there's no more earned income. So income inflow goes away from age 62 to 66 before Social Security. That's a point in time where we'll talk more about at the end of the projection, but I did want to point that out at this point. Then at age 67, that's when Social Security gets turned on. For John and Jane, it's about $80,000 for a full year. We're saying $86,000 or so in Social Security. So that's a big milestone turning Social Security on, and which in this case would reduce the amount that they would need to withdraw from their investment accounts to live on. So that's what Social Security is doing in this scenario. We don't include cost of living adjustments on Social Security just to stay conservative. And then also in this scenario, if you scroll or as I scroll down here to ages 75, an important year for them is the first year that they have to take required minimum distributions. We'll talk more about this and this number of $180,000 of required distributions. But for everyone listening and watching, a required distribution is essentially the IRS telling everyone who has pre-tax money that they have to withdraw a certain amount every year after they reach a certain age, and they have to pay taxes on that money. So that's money that's never been paid, that's never had taxes paid on before. In their scenario, they have all of their retirement assets in pre-tax 401ks. So this $180,000 number is their RMD or projected RMD, and we'll come back to how we strategize on that here in a few minutes. So from here, I'm going to go over to the invested asset tab here. This is essentially going to show us what's happening with the cash flows as well as the underlying investment values. So they started with $2 million in 401ks, taxable account, and $20,000 in savings, so a little over $2 million. Now, as they continue to work, they're saving into their 401ks. There's an employer match. There's also some excess savings into taxable accounts from here and there if they don't spend that money throughout their working years and then into retirement. So that's factored in. And then when they do retire, that's when there's negative flows, which all that means is there's a withdrawal from their accounts to live on. So there's a net cash flow section that's showing here's how much money they would need to draw from their accounts to be able to spend what they want to spend, which is the $10,000 a month in total. Um, so as we look into 2025, an important column here is the portfolio return column. We factor in a 5.5% rate of return. So nothing crazy, something conservative, but we want to make sure in their plan that this is a sustainable plan. So 5.5% rate of return while they're saving and still working. Their $2 million is projected to grow by the time they reach 62 to 3.5 million. So included in that number, you have your 401k match, your employer match, as well as growth on the money. So by the way, that's 5.5% annualized. So while some years in reality might be better than others, this is just a flat 5.5% or so, just to kind of illustrate the concept.
Yeah. And so one thing I want to point out is the net cash flows when it turns negative. I know sometimes people just don't like seeing negative numbers, and I think one big thing that we have to coach to our clients is that a net negative cash flow is not actually a negative thing. It's not a bad thing at all. All it means is that, hey, we have to spend some of the money that we've worked so hard to save for and plan for while we are now in retirement. So it's not a bad thing at all. I think the key thing here and the question, the big remaining question is, hey, they have done a pretty good job saving, it looks like. And if they do want to retire at 62, Nick, how does all this play out for them? You know, what is the end result? Can they actually do this?
Yeah, so to determine the answer to that, what we're ultimately paying attention to is this ending balance column here on the right, if you're watching on the screen. So remember, they started with 2 million. They're saving by the time they retire, the ending balance in their all of their accounts, so cash in the bank, 401ks as well as taxable, 3.5 million. If they retire at 62, what does that 3.5 million grow to or end up being? So that's the ultimate question. And as we go down the projection here, we like to look at age 90 as a good gauge. So based on the amount that they retire with, based on cash flows, all the income, distributions, things like that, the 3.5 million when they retire is projected to grow to 5.1 million by the time they're 90. So to answer the question, can they retire at 62? The projection says yes. And there's some more things to think about, but ultimately, based on this projection, that's what it's showing us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in most cases it would look like it's a pretty comfortable retirement type of plan. Now, I think there's things that, from our side of the table, and we tell this to people that are kind of working through our process all the time, is from our side of the table, we want to see this projection. I know John and Jane want to see this because they want to know, hey, can we retire at 62? We want to see this as well because one, it helps us feel comfortable in the way that they're going to spend relative to how they have saved. So it helps us feel comfortable about their plan as well. But the bigger piece is that it helps us see opportunities for planning as well as things that may have been overlooked in maybe their expenses or just things in general that we would want to be talking about as we go through financial planning. So Nick, let's go to the big one, which is go back to that term that you mentioned, required minimum distribution. So that's a forced withdrawal that we have to take at a certain age. For a lot of you listening, it's going to be age 75. For some of you, it's 73. So when Nick showed us that number, let's go find that number again. When John and Jane turn 75, they're going to be forced to take 180,000 roughly out of their IRA accounts every single year, plus or minus, for the rest of their lives in all essence. Take out that money, pay the tax on it, and then use whatever is left for reinvestment, for actual cash flow needs. And in some cases, you may consider a strategy around giving away and being charitable, and that can help your tax situation. Um, and we've done a whole podcast. It's called a qualified charitable distribution. Feel free to go look that one up. It's a really good one. If you're already in RMD age, they can help with your taxation on those RMDs. But the big thing here is that that is projected out in 2045. We sit here in 2025 right now. We've just gone through some tax reform, and we know taxes are rather um, discounted right now, and it's a very opportune a time full of opportunity when it comes to tax planning. So let's scroll back up, Nick, and this is a reality of the conversations that we do have with clients. Is let's look at this period of time when there's no income coming in the door when they retire at 62. So for a while there, they're making really good income, 250,000 a year. Not a whole lot of tax planning can be done when you're making that type of income. But when we get to a place where our income has significantly dropped, or really in this case is kind of going to zero, now the door is open for some tax strategy. And the biggest one today is if anyone is concerned about where tax rates are going in their future, we're kind of at the lowest point of where taxation is today. Highly likely, given a lot of the things and your belief system, but also if you just think about the national debt and everything where it's headed and government spending, a lot of people would point to the idea of, hey, eventually they're gonna raise tax rates at some point in my lifetime. So a way to hedge around that is if I've got $1 million in pre-tax 401k assets, I may want to consider getting some of that out into a tax-free bucket called a Roth IRA. In order to do that, we have to make a decision to pay tax on it when we don't really have to do that. So the Roth conversion is a very commonly talked about strategy in our practice today. And when they're 62 and have zero income, we've got a tremendous amount of opportunity to start converting some of those assets. How do we do that in reality? As we bring our clients into what we call a tax strategy meeting. Nick is in the middle of tax strategy meetings right now with clients, and he will be for the next few months. So, Nick, can you just walk through, briefly as far as what a tax strategy meeting looks like? What does the tax team look at, and what types of recommendations are we coming up with there?
Yeah, so for everyone who's going through tax meetings, we are checking on a multitude of things. When it comes to, like Mer said, Roth conversions, we're running software, a few different softwares to determine if Roth conversions should be considered for the client that we're meeting with at the time. So things like Roth conversions, things like charitable giving strategies, withdrawal strategies are something that typically comes up aligned with how RMDs are taken, are very common conversations, because those kind of go hand in hand. And then also, if someone is on the younger side and they're not in RMDs, how can we do other things to take advantage of maybe charitable giving strategies like donor advised funds, things like that. And then a very more, I would say, less complicated conversation is just figuring out withholdings when it comes to taxes. So a large part of that tax meeting is going over the tax projection for last year, comparing it to this year, but then figuring out how to avoid underpayment penalties when it comes to paying your taxes throughout the year. So when you're working, it's a different scenario, but when you are withdrawing from accounts, that's where tax withholdings are pretty much manual and they have to be figured out to avoid underpayment penalties. And then also, we want to make sure that everything's taken into account when it comes to maybe you're selling a house, maybe you're selling stock that's highly appreciated. Taxable gains can result in different tax withholdings. And so we're figuring that out for all of our clients kind of as the years go on.
Yeah. So I think for John and Jane, tax strategy is going to be a big thing. Another thing that we would help them think through is when is the right time to turn on Social Security. In this projection, we have them waiting until age 67. You can take that anywhere between age 62 and 70. The longer you wait, the higher the benefit. But also, the longer that you wait, the more you have to take from your own assets to cover your cash flow needs. So, a big conversation we have is, well, hey, it may make sense to take it at 62. It's a lesser amount, but it may make sense to take it at 62 to reduce the withdrawal pressure we have on our own assets. We've been paying into Social Security for a long enough time. Let's make sure we get the benefit of it, and let's preserve our own assets for growth and for legacy down the road. Another thing that I think in this case may be overlooked is so they've got their expenses running at 10,000 a month. Right now, their health care is covered through their employers and it comes out of their paycheck. They don't think about it. Well, if you retire early at 62, the problem is for a lot of people, and what keeps people working to 65 sometimes is Medicare doesn't kick in until 65. So they're going to have 3 years or so that they're going to have to think through private insurance and how that's going to factor into their plan because it's not cheap. Today, you would expect, one person is going to be kind of in that $800 to $1,500 a month, depending on how much insurance you want. So it's not a small bill to ignore. And so that would be something to consider. At age 65, now we've got Medicare to think about and all the different decisions that we have to make on Medicare. Luckily, today in our practice, we have Sean Southard, who I'm sure if you've been listening to the podcast, you've heard him on here a few times. He is our Medicare guru and helps people make those decisions. Also, when it comes to Medicare, now this ties back into tax planning. Is Medicare, if we make too much income, and whether it's through earned income or investment income or through Roth conversions, if we make too much income, Medicare is going to surcharge us. And so we have to be very careful and very diligent in tax planning from age 63 and onwards. So we don't run into extra, they don't call it a penalty, but I would say it's pretty much a penalty because you make too much in retirement. So I think, this is just, again, a short little introduction into what financial planning looks like and what these simulations look like. That was really our goal for today, is to kind of walk through some of the things that we're looking at. And also, yes, give the client comfort that, yes, you can pull the trigger. 62 looks very good. But there's a lot of things that we need to think about, from the investment implementation to the withdrawal strategy, which is going to turn into tax strategy, and then obviously the health and the long-term care planning and everything else that comes with a well thought out financial plan around retirement. We call that the peace of mind pathway. Building that roadmap, and then going and implementing that roadmap, and then nurturing it. So what Nick and I are talking about today is pretty much nurturing that plan and making sure it stays on track, because every year is going to be different. Every family is different. Every situation is different. And so we want to have plans individualized to them. But that's really all we had. We want to take a little bit of time to show you how this all works in concept. If you have questions on this, if you want to see a plan of your own, we are always happy to chat with you. It all starts with a 15-minute phone call. If you hop over to our website, pomwealth.net, you will see a link that will help you get scheduled, and then we're happy to have that conversation with you. But for now, Nick, thanks a lot for hopping on with us today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. And you listeners, thank you for tuning in. We're always happy to share some knowledge and share some experience that we have. So we appreciate your time, and thanks for tuning in. And we'll talk to you next Monday.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Secure Your Retirement. If you would like to learn more, we have actually created an online course called 3 Keys to Secure Your Retirement. This video course helps you to think through all the different steps as you get ready to plan for and live throughout retirement. You can access this by going to our website, pomwealth.net. In addition, you can also subscribe below to our podcast called Secure Your Retirement.
For more retirement tips, check out these videos. Also, if you find them valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like.